After the positive reception the first episode of Resident Evil 2 Remake Mythbusters received, I decided to take a look at some of the myths and theories you guys posted in the comment section of that video. As was the case with that video, if you have a myth of your own that you want busting, then leave a comment down below, and if it seems plausible or interesting, I'll give it a shot. So before we get started, I just wanted to take a look back at a myth from last week's episode. I demonstrated how easy it was to walk past lickers as long as you don't touch them or break into a run. Nudging the thumbstick, walking while aiming, and even just a normal walk is enough to sneak by undetected. Somebody on that video commented that they think that Claire weighs less than Leon, so therefore makes less noise, making it easier to sneak past. So just to put that myth to bed, let's try walking past a licker with Leon. As you saw, the licker didn't attack, though just as they did when I attempted this with Claire, they do seem to know you're there. If you're still having trouble with sneaking past lickers, I'd love to know what platform you're playing on and what difficulty too. These tests were carried out on standard difficulty, but if you want me to go back and check out hardcore, then let me know. Anyway, moving on from last week's episode, but sticking with lickers now. During your playthrough of Claire, you can find an SMG, which in my opinion is way worse than Leon's shotgun. It may have one benefit though, and that's a suppressor. Throughout my time with Resident Evil 2, I've noticed that a lot of the enemies in the game react to sound. For example, if a zombie has its back to you and you walk behind it, it will not turn around until you start to sprint. It's the same for a certain fedora wearing bad guy, but we'll get to him later. I wanted to test if the lickers, who are blind but have a great sense of hearing, would react to silenced SMG fire. Again, this test was carried out on normal difficulty, and before we see how the suppressor fares, let me remind you what happens if you fire an unsuppressed shot next to a licker. Yeah, not good. So let's head down the same corridor with the suppressed SMG and see if the lickers react. That's right, they don't. In fact, it seems like the lickers are attracted to where the bullets land, though only briefly, meaning you could possibly use the SMG to lure lickers out of the way. For me, Claire's SMG is still nowhere near as useful as Leon's shotgun, but the fact that you can deal with zombies without alerting other enemies is pretty useful. Onto one of the strangest suggestions in the last video, and it involves a licker's bumhole. If you use the model viewer in the main menu, you can see that lickers have a fully rendered bumhole. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I love attention to detail in games, but this one might be pushing it a bit far. The theory proposed was that if you shoot a licker in the bumhole with Claire's grenade launcher, they will die in one hit. Now, lickers are some of the toughest enemies in Resident Evil 2 Remake, so an easy way to take one down would be a godsend. So I grabbed my grenade launcher and stared at licker bums for way too long. Let's see if it works. To be honest, I'm not surprised that this myth is a dud. I tried 5 or 6 times, and on the first attempt, when the licker fell to the floor, I thought we were onto something, but nope, they lived through it. The trouble is, I've spent so long looking at lickers' rear ends that whenever I close my eyes, it's now all I see. Moving on from licker bums now, and it wouldn't be a Mythbusters episode without Mr. X. You guys had loads of suggestions involving Mr. X, so I picked out a couple of the most interesting ones to try today. In the last episode we covered what happens when you down Mr. X, how to avoid his attacks, and how to follow him around without knowing you're there. Today I wanted to cover a myth that I've seen suggested more than once, and that is that there are places in the main hall Mr. X won't go. So in the original Resident Evil 2, the main hall was a place of sanctuary. Neither zombies or Mr. X could enter the area, so you knew it was an ideal place to take a breather. In the remake, that's not the case. As soon as Marvin turns into a zombie, the main hall is fair game. So the commenter said that if you stand beneath the statue or behind the desk in the main hall, Mr. X won't be able to follow you there. Now if you recall from the last episode, we established that there are a lot of places Mr. X couldn't go, and a couple of those were save rooms. So I loaded up an old save on my first playthrough of Leon to see if this would work. Let's check it out. Unfortunately, it seems like there is no hiding from Mr. X in the lobby. I thought that because the desk had a typewriter on it, something normally seen in save rooms, that he may avoid the area, but we had no such luck. Standing under the statue also provided no shelter from Mr. X as well, though I have a theory about this in a little bit. To be sure, I loaded up Claire's save and tried the same thing again. On Claire's playthrough, there isn't a typewriter behind the desk, so I wasn't expecting much this time. Let's see if it worked. And yet again, disappointment. Mr. X really is an unstoppable killing machine. Well, almost. Do you remember in the last episode where we found out that you can't enter certain rooms, meaning you can have situations like this? Well, the only logical explanation as to why Mr. X wouldn't attack you under the statue is the door to the secret room is hidden under the statue. Let me show you what I mean. So as you can see, I was in clear sight of him, but he would walk away. I'm thinking that if you stood in a very specific spot underneath the statue, Mr. X's AI would believe you were at the entrance of the secret room and not attack. I tried standing in loads of different places underneath the statue but couldn't get him to ignore me. But that is the only logical reason I can think of as to why Mr. X wouldn't attack. Let me know if you've had any experience of this. The next theory surrounding the big guy that I want to try out is exactly how is he attracted to you. And no, I don't mean taking you on a date kind of attraction, I mean what makes him hunt you down. Now of course there are certain moments in the game where Mr. X is scripted to show up and there is nothing you can do to avoid it. Well, I plan to encounter Mr. X for the first time, when he lifts up the helicopter, and lose him and head to the library. I chose the library as it's not a room he goes in often when looking for you. Once in the library, I just stood in the corner to see if he would come. I ran around the library and finally I shot some zombies to see which method attracted him faster. Now I've heard that even if you stand still in the corner and don't move, Mr. X will find you eventually. So let's start with that one. How long do you think it will take Mr. X to find me if I stand still in the corner in the library? So I left Leon standing there for a good 10 minutes and Mr. X didn't even enter the library once. I think it's safe to say that standing still is a good way of avoiding an arse whipping. So that was standing still, what about running around? Let's try it. This took way longer than I thought it would. Reading through comments on the last video, people were saying that running is a surefire way to attract Mr. X. And if I'm honest, that's what I thought. Well, I was sprinting for just over 5 minutes before he decided to show up. A lot longer than I thought I could get away with. I think it's safe to say that running does lure him to you, but not as quickly as you might think. So the final test now. How long does it take for Mr. X to bust down a door if he hears you shooting? Let's take a look. So from the time the first shot was fired, it took Mr. X just over 40 seconds to enter the library, which is by far the quickest time. Now it's worth mentioning that this was all done from the same save point and was on the standard difficulty, so he may react differently on the other difficulties, but after testing this out, I must say I'm surprised at the length of time the other two methods took, and also surprised by how quick he reacted to gunfire. In my must know tips and tricks video I made on Resident Evil 2 Remake, I advised the conservation of ammo, and judging by how quick Mr. X reacted to gunfire, that's probably even more important now. One final theory that I wanted to put to the test was, can you push a zombie off and avoid damage? In all my time playing the game, I've never seen this happen, and the person who suggested this said you have to push the opposite direction of where you're attacked. So if you're attacked from the left hand side, push the thumbstick right. Now I tried this a lot of times, and I mean a lot. The commenter said that this only works when attacked from the side, so I kept trying to position myself in a way that would have the zombie attack me from the side, but it proved incredibly difficult. Now I wouldn't even see it as worthy of a mention here if they didn't provide proof. Here's a video they uploaded of themselves pushing a zombie off after they were attacked. So as you can see from that video, it does work. I just couldn't get it to happen. Other people in the comments suggested that this could only be done on assisted difficulty, whilst the uploader of the video said that he was playing on normal difficulty at the time. This one definitely needs more investigating, but I want to know if you've experienced this at all, either accidentally or on purpose. Let me know. So that's all the myths I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, then a like is really appreciated. If you have any myths or ideas of your own that you want me to see try out, then leave a comment down below. The best way to contact me is either on Instagram or Twitter. The links to both are in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon.